Fourth year of Brent Venables over at Oklahoma. You got a pretty tough schedule. You got a new offensive coordinator. You got a team that's pretty talented across the board. What can they do, though, in 2025? What is the expectation? I'm looking at their win total right now, and you're seeing 6.5. Is that what Oklahoma fans are expecting? 7 wins? I don't know. I think it might be fair to expect maybe even a little bit more than that, but this is going to be definitely a grinded out year. John Mateer at quarterback, I know everyone's got a lot of questions about, but quite frankly, how many quarterback offensive coordinator pairings do you like better than Ben Arbuckle and John Mateer in the SEC?
I don't know. I'm looking at their schedule right now too, and I'm like, how many would I trade with these guys? And honestly, I don't see any. I mean, maybe, and don't kill me. Don't kill me, Oklahoma fans. Maybe would I take Arch Manning and Sarkisian, but
yeah,
Flood Sarkisian. But that's also more upside and just Sark being freaking Sark. But yeah, I think it's a really, really fun dynamic duo. I'm not too worried about Mateer adjusting to the SEC. I know you're not either, in terms of what he could do coming over from Washington State, especially with Arbuckle, man. It's going to be fun. Hoping to get some health from his offensive line and wide receiver core, which we didn't see last year. But I guess we'll get into that too later on. But it should be a fun year for Oklahoma, hopefully. Too bad that schedule is just brutal. I think your team is much better. I don't know how much better your record's going to be. And that's the frustrating part, I think, especially with expectations of Oklahoma fans, which is high. It should be high. You dominated the Big 12 for like 10 years, right? You moved the SEC and you just didn't hit the ground running like you wanted to. Last year was really frustrating. A lot of injuries, disappointing quarterback play, disappointing offensive coordinator play, right? And all that kind of stuff. So is not your start to the SEC that you wanted, but you still have the talent. You still have, the expectations and resources to be able to compete in the SEC. We'll see how this year shakes out.
Yeah, and you brought in some key pieces in the transfer portal on the offense side of the ball outside of John Mateer. And John Mateer is interesting because he's a pretty good athlete. Like he's mobile. He's kind of, I think he has an underrated arm. I'm not gonna say he has like a great arm talent, but definitely in that scheme where you're getting guys open. I mean, he can definitely make something happen. He was playing with a really solid wide receiver core last year, against a schedule that was maybe not as tough as the one he's going to be facing against this year, but definitely going to be interesting for sure with Jackson Arnold out the door. We'll move over to the skill positions. I mean, bringing Jaden Ott in that running back, it was talked a lot about, or it was talked about a lot in this offseason, bringing him in. I think for a great reason. I think Jaden Ott is so good. He was banged up last year, right? That's why you didn't really see necessarily the production. You saw Thomas maybe take over more of a role in that Cal offense. But Jaden Ott is good, man. Dare I say elite?
Yeah, I mean, I think he had a disappointing year last year in terms of what we thought he could have been at Cal. Cal was a nightmare in a lot of different ways, especially running the ball. I mean, Fernando Mendoza did his thing, and he'll be pretty darn good at Indiana this year. But I think Jaden Ott gives you a big time boost in that room. Javante Barnes obviously coming back, doing his thing. Taylor Tatum, you're hoping takes a step in year 2 here, former highly rated recruit. I think it's a solid room. I think it's a very solid room. I think it's an important room because, especially early in the season, if you're not getting health from your wide receivers, which right now they're not healthy, this room is going to have to be big. Not only running the football, but also being guys that can catch the ball in the backfield. That's one thing that Ott also does pretty darn well. Last year he had 25 receptions for Cal. Barnes had 17 receptions. So guys that have versatility that you can be creative with Ben Arbuckle and obviously help Mateer check downs, easy completions, stuff like that, keep you in second and third and manageable.
You talk about wide receiver health. I mean, last year it was abysmal having to deal with what they had to deal with in that wide receiver room, and you're kind of seeing it again a little bit. Deion Burks, minor stuff. What we're hearing, he should be fine, but it was a battle. It was an uphill battle for him last year, and he was good when he played. Big time transfer portal get from Purdue just a year ago. Satania is a big transfer portal get from Arkansas. I think he's a big play guy, speedster. His dad's literally a track coach. Giovanni Gibson, I think, is the one that they're really excited about from Arkansas Pine Bluff. He had 1,200 yards last year. He's a big guy, 6'2", 211, just shows some real flashes, but broke his leg in the spring. And he's still rehabbing. So what's going on there? And you're the PT guy, CD. So what is the deal with this?
It's definitely concerning. I mean, typically you see a broken bone if it's clean break. I mean, 6 to 8 weeks and that'll heal, right? I think the reality is sometimes depending on where the break is, and especially in that leg, in that lower leg, you could have some issues. And depending on what they had to do to rehab it back in, I think also taking time to build up the other soft tissue in there with your muscles and other things to get you back and ready to play. I'm hoping it's more precautionary than setbacks and complications, because you did see what happens, what was supposed to not be too crazy of a rehab for Deion Burks, and ended up just lingering. It just sucks, because I'm with you here. I think Gibson's is a really, really fun piece for him. He averaged 3.2 yards per route run, which is obviously doesn't sound like a lot, but it's like a ton. It is a lot. It's a pretty significant jump than anyone else you had in your room last year. So he's obviously going to be a big piece. And also with his size too, 6'2", 210, kind of gives you a different frame than anyone else in your room as well to work with Mateer and this offense. But yeah, you said it's health. It's health and health and health in guys, because there's the ability and the versatility is there. I trust the scheme. I trust Mateer to get the ball to these guys in space and on the money. It's going to be more about health again. And, hopefully you get better luck than you had last year. We'll see about guys like Zion Kearney taking steps, right? We'll see, obviously, Satagna, a guy that coming in, hopefully gives you some boost. Jermichael Carter, is he a guy? That's kind of coming on strong in camp. Yeah, but like you said, it's health in this wide receiver room. But it could be a hit. If you're telling me right now, you get a healthy Giovanni Gibson and a healthy Deion Burks, and whatever production you're getting from 3 through 6, I think that's a really good group. That's a really good group, and you can do a lot of damage with that this season. It just depends, because you do have some early games, Michigan, Auburn, right? Games that you want to win. If you're going to complete what you want to do this season and accomplish your goals, you got to win those games, and you're going to need to throw the ball to do that, right? So we'll see if they get healthy.
Yeah, and that you need those guys as pass catchers, because I don't know what you have in this tight end room. I mean, Bauer Sharp, he's at LSU now. We talked about him in the LSU video. Jake Roberts, he's gone. He's graduated. And what's normally been a pretty solid, tight end room. I think you have talent here for sure. I think Caden Helms could be that guy to step into that role. And, I think he could be really good. A little unproven. So they brought in 2 transfers. I don't necessarily know that those guys are going to be impact guys as much as they are depth guys. But, yeah, that room will be a question mark for me for sure. And then the offensive line.
Wait, one thing about the tight end room. I know it's not a big deal with Arbuckle. He doesn't use a ton of tight ends, but I do think there is value to have tight ends in the SEC. You have to be able to block and catch and have that kind of options, because it does get so much harder. Every yard is that much harder to get to. So, yeah, unproven. And I think it's pretty telling that they didn't go out and spend heavy for tight ends, although tight ends are hard to get in the portal. They kind of got a couple reserves, hopefully guys that can give you good blocking, and then hope, like you said, Caden Helms takes a step for you.
On the offensive line, I mean, it wasn't very great last year. Injuries played a role in that for sure, but they're running it back. What are these guys going to be, I guess, in 2025? I think he brought in a couple transfers that could play some. Maybe you just realized, oh my gosh, we had no depth last year. Let's go grab some. Uh, Fasusa or Michael Fasusi, is he going to be a guy that ends up, scraping out some playing time as well? The big time 5-star freshman that they got. Um, Overall, I'd say that this is a position group. Aside from the health of the wide receiver room, I'm a little bit skeptical of this offensive line, but I'm not sure how many. I mean, there's only like 4 teams in the SEC that I'd put in like that tier one, and then like everything else is kind of just like gravy, And the year before, Oklahoma got massacred by the transfer portal. So, like, if you think about it, I think last year they probably played better than I even thought they were going to play, and they had all those injuries. So maybe I was a little bit lower on their offensive line than I should have been last year, but this year, you're running it back, and yeah, maybe you see these guys take a step, or maybe you just get kind of what you had last year, which was like an okay, average to below average rushing attack, and Jackson Arnold, fighting for his life back there on passing downs. So if you see significant improvement on this offensive line from these guys, I think that this offense could be very dangerous.
Yeah, it's going to be obviously one of. I don't think it's an overstatement to say this. Like, this position group is one of the key position groups in the SEC, not only with Oklahoma and what they can do, but because of who Oklahoma plays and their schedule. You talk about like beating teams that are like legit playoff contenders and could be affecting their seasons. This is a massive, massive part of that. Um, I just think health. I do think you have more depth. You mentioned that than you had last year, right? Like, I do think if you have some injuries, and because there is some competition at left tackle, right? Because there's some competition interiorly and right tackle. Sounds like Logan Howland's going to be moving over there, but you're getting some good stuff there. Ozeta kind of being healthy. So you don't have your like 23, 24-year-old dudes that Florida has that have been playing together for like a couple years now, but you have like talented players. You have a mix of some older guys, a mix of some younger guys. Obviously, Foezi, the 5-star talent, he's a guy that's going to be hard to keep off the field. I think fans would love to see him out there. I think the reality is I don't want a true freshman protecting my prize quarterback's blind side in the SEC, but also like like you probably you know more than me, but he's a pretty good dude, right? And I think it's not the worst thing in the world to trot someone like that out there, especially with his frame and athleticism and upside. But if you're going to have Michigan and Auburn, who has pretty darn good defensive line play early in the season, you want this group to be clicking right away. And I also do think scheme, like offensive line, is also one of those positions too where like you can have a coordinator scheme up things better than what maybe the offensive line is capable of and make him look in better spots. So hopefully Arbuckle does elevate that group.
On the defensive side of the ball, which is, Brent Venables' bread and butter, I thought they were fine last year in some aspects of the game. I thought their front seven was particularly impressive at times. The back end, you had some revolving doors, you had some competition, you had guys like Eli Bowen stepping up and being one of the premier defenders on this team as a true freshman, and he's coming back, of course, as a sophomore. But I guess we'll start with the defensive line. I'll say pieces. I mean, you got a lot of pieces, and I think you got guys that can get to the quarterback pretty well. I'm not going to call this a tier one defensive line in the SEC. Maybe you feel differently, but if some of these guys are taking the steps, these younger guys, these highly rated recruits that they brought in, they recruited on the defensive line the last couple of years better than a lot of teams in the SEC. And if some of those guys take jumps or they get production from those spots, or, Marvin Jones, takes some sort of jump that we've been waiting for him to, take, like this defensive line, it could be really solid.
Yeah, I think that's just the thing too, is you got some versatility there. The talent is there. Holy cow. I mean, how many 5-star kids do you need on one defensive line? No, but it's interesting. Obviously led by, our Mason Thomas guy, going to be kind of vaulting himself into one of the better pass rushers in the SEC and trying to solidify himself in the NFL draft this coming season. But you talked about some jumps from younger guys. I want to see David Stone, man. I want to see David Stone like really, really pop off. It sounds like he's having a good camp. Sounds like he's very dedicated and putting in the work on and off the field. We'll see about Jaden Jackson. They got Adeboro, who's a third-year guy now, who's looking, hopefully to crack some rotation in some kind of way. Obviously, Marvin Jones Jr. coming over from Florida State and Georgia before that. And I don't think he's like a game wrecker for you, but I do think he's a nice piece to have. Yeah, like you said, I don't know if it's this, elite group. I think the upside is there to be really freaking good and dominant at times, which is what it should be under Brent Venables. But it's not like your surefire 3 or 4 first round picks that we've seen Brent Venables actually have in some spots at Clemson. But it should be fun here. Obviously, going to miss, Ethan Downs and whatever else. But yeah, I'm not too worried about this group as I am compared to the offensive line. So good.
At linebacker, you lose Danny Stutzman, who, just the heart of this defense. But I think you got some talented guys here. And I think playing behind your defensive line that you are playing behind is definitely going to help a lot with like whatever development, you want to see from guys like Kip Lewis, Kobe McKenzie. Omosigo. I'm pretty sure that's how you say that. But so Oklahoma fans roast me if I'm not saying that right. But I feel pretty good about this linebacker group. And losing Danny Stutzman is a big deal, but I think the athleticism in this room is definitely enough, and the defensive line that you're playing behind it is. I think that's enough to make up for the loss of Danny Stutzman in the aggregate.
Yeah, I'm hoping Kobe McKenzie. I don't think it'll be. I'm not expecting him to be, the kind of player that Stutzman was at times in his career for Oklahoma. But yeah, a group that I'm not too worried about. Now, if you had to start tapping into some of this depth here, I think that's where I could be a little concerned. I do think there's talent there, but in terms of experience and maybe like physically ready, mentally ready to play in the SEC, I'm not sure. I feel super confident about that. But yeah, I think in terms of what it could be or what it is, like it's fine. Something I'm not too worried about. Linebackers also group too. Tight end. We kind of talk about tight end. Like it's not like it's this major game wrecking group where if you don't have elite guys, you can't have an elite defense. I think if you've got guys in the right spot, guys who have played a lot of football like Kip Lewis, Omosigo, McKenzie kind of stopping in there, who's a 4th-year guy now. You're going to give yourself chances to win games. Just be in the right spot. Obviously, listen to Venables and do what he wants you to be, and see if you can generate pressure too. But yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah, and then from the secondary, this was a group that you're like, okay, maybe there were some spots where they weren't fantastic last year, but Eli Bowen was fantastic for you. Even with the departure of Billy Bowman, Eli Bowen's really good. Spears Jennings has a lot of snaps, and he's physical and played pretty solid. Peyton Bowen's a guy that highly rated recruit. Does he take a big step? I think he definitely can. That is a guy that was a huge win for Oklahoma just a couple years ago on the recruiting trail. I don't know how much of a jump I'm expecting this group to take, but I think with Eli Bowen being your solid player back there, if Peyton Bowen is also as good, as we want him to be, Spears Jennings with his, it's okay. This group could be good. They didn't invest at all in this group in the transfer portal, which kind of surprised me, but maybe it just means that they're pretty confident what they had, because they obviously can invest in the transfer portal because they did on the offensive side of the football. But Brent Venables said, no, we're not going to get anyone in this secondary. We have what we need here. And granted, there were good players. We've talked about them, in LSU's preview, Mississippi State's preview. There were good, defensive backs out there in the transfer portal. to have. You know, Texas A&M, another one as well, grabbing defensive backs in the portal. I mean, Alabama grabbed Cam Calhoun. Oklahoma seems to feel pretty good about their secondary.
Yeah, one thing I would like to see jump from is playmaking. Right, they were bottom third in interceptions. I know it's kind of a variable stat to have, but it is something that is a trend. It's over the season. I think it did end up being a problem, especially when you had a struggling offense. Creating those short fields would be big time for you, especially if whatever's going on with your wide receivers this year and O-line play. Like that's obviously going to help a good defense. A playmaking defense with short fields is going to help your offense look that much better. It also kind of keeps you fresh, keeps you out the field, and keeps the other defenses, in tough spots, having to keep going on out there after short possessions. But yeah, I mean, it's Brent Venables' defense, right? It's the secondary. There's talent in it. I think it's also pretty telling that they didn't go out and get a ton of transfers on defense, right? They hit the portal hard for O-line, for wide receiver, quarterback, obviously running back. Like they're not afraid to use the portal. Defensively, though, Venables' bread and butter. He feels pretty good about their talent evaluation and about their development and about what they're bringing back, even with some of their losses in each position group. Ethan Downs, right? Stutzman, Billy Bowman, guys that were leaders for multiple years for this Oklahoma defense. They feel good about replacing them. Now, is it going to be one-to-one replacement, or is it going to be just overall development and growth of each of the other surrounding players in those rooms? Probably more of that latter, but you do have some guys that are really coming in their own. And Eli Bowen, I know you're pretty high on him. We'll see Peyton Bowen, what he does in his development, a couple other guys, but it should be a fun group. But yeah, I want to see a little bit more explosiveness and be like, if you're this confident in this defense to not have to go out and add pieces, like I want to see you be dominant. I want to see you be game wrecking and obviously, will your team to some wins if you have to.
Yeah, while they didn't invest in the defensive back room, I think we wouldn't be doing this offense that Oklahoma or this offseason that Oklahoma did any justice if we didn't talk about some of these coaching hires, right? We talked about Ben Arbuckle, okay, but how about also bringing in the quarterbacks coach at Washington State? Some continuity there with Ben Arbuckle, some continuity with John Mateer on the offense side of the football. You also brought in Kevin Wilson as an offensive analyst. This guy was a head coach a year ago for Tulsa. That's a big deal. Another head coach that was a head coach a year ago, Nate Drayling, ring any bells? Utah State interim head coach. He's going to be your linebackers coach. So you're bringing in another guy that's a really good hire. And then Wes Goodwin to boot, you're bringing him in from Clemson, to be your outside linebackers coach. So I think those 5 hires, like I feel good about all those guys. Like that's going to add to this coaching staff that's also already pretty solid, with DeMarco Murray, Todd Bates, Valai. I think this is a very good coaching staff and maybe one of the more underrated ones in the SEC. People will have their opinions on bed and ball, but whatever. I mean, I think this is a good coaching staff, and I think Brent Venables did a good job bringing in some guys with some serious experience and some different perspectives on this staff that I think will gel. I think it'll gel together, and I think it's going to look good, and I think this Oklahoma team is going to be pretty dangerous for any of these teams on their schedule, despite the win total that we're looking at being 6.5.
It's fun to see Kevin Wilson back in Oklahoma. He was an offensive coordinator there for plenty of years under Bob Stoops, right? And obviously, really, really smart, dude. That's a fun spot. I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, the schedule, though, man. This schedule is brutal. 7.5. Here's where I'm at, though. And I think this is a solid team. I think you're getting better. I have a hard time looking at your schedule and your win total and Florida's schedule and their win total. And, I think Florida is really good. I think Florida's a better team than Oklahoma. And, I just have a hard time equating that, where it's like their schedules are somewhat comparable, right? Florida's probably a little bit harder. But that stretch between mid-October to mid-November is one that's not easy, right? And if you're not clicking, if you've already lost a couple times against Michigan and maybe Auburn at home, that could be a real, real tough spot for you. The sad thing is, I think I'd still be disappointed if I win 7 games this year. Yeah, if I'm an Oklahoma fan and I don't hit that under, even though you could probably still be a top 20 team in the country and win 7 games. That's just the reality of what happened when you decided to move to the SEC, right? Like you were going to get some of these schedules, and Greg Sankey and the SEC did not do Oklahoma any favors, unlike what they did with Texas and their schedule ability right in the beginning of their SEC tenure. But yeah.
Yeah, now there's some over 7.5s at plus money. Over 6.5s are pretty significantly juiced. So we can call it 7 if you want to be a little bit more fair on this win total. This is tough for me because this could still be a top 20 team in the country and only win 7 games. I think it's more likely that they go 8-4 than 6-6. If I'm being honest, because you look at Illinois State, you look at Temple, Kent State. I think Missouri's a win. I think Tennessee is a win, and then you get Auburn at home, Michigan at home.
Tennessee on the road though, like
yeah, that's an interesting one. So I don't know, man. If we're picking this at 6.5, I'm like, okay, yeah, definitely the over. I think 7-5 is probably the most likely outcome. I don't know, man. I just don't know what to expect from this offensive line, really, and the secondary. We'll have to wait and see, but I'm gonna lean like ever so slightly to the over. Obviously, not a play for me at all. I think the Ben Arbuckle effect is in play. Like, what happened? What happened when Jeff Lebby, a very good offensive coordinator, left, and you had Seth I mean, it just fell apart. It completely fell apart.
Yeah.
So you get what is that Oklahoma team's record last year? If they had a pretty competent offense, like it would have been a scary team. It would have been a scary, scary team. You think about some of those teams that they ended up beating. I'm gonna lean slightly to the over.
Yeah, at 7, it's really tempting. At 7.5, I'm definitely on the under on that. I'll think I'll stick with the under there. I'll fade you a little bit. It's not confident enough for a play. I will say though, like if you're gonna go over and you feel really good about this Oklahoma team, I don't think it's crazy to go all in. I don't think the value there is a ton at plus 470 to make the college football playoff. But with this schedule, I think 9 wins gets you there probably. So if you think they're going to win 8 games, why not, give yourself a bunch of juice with, or with a bunch of odds in your favor for that one extra win, especially when, like, other than Texas and Alabama, probably, like, you're not going to be like, you're not going to have a significant or like a noticeable talent gap between the two teams that you're playing. Even LSU, and you get LSU at home too. By the end of the year, hopefully you've got health in your wide receiver room and continuity with your offensive line. Oh, it's tough.
What were the odds to make the college football playoffs?
It's plus 480, which isn't like great, but I think
I'm seeing one at plus 550, so
that's better. I think that's also pretty telling that like how tough this schedule is. They're over on win total being at what is 7.5, 7. Like that's pretty telling that Vegas knows like, hey, like the team is talented enough if they put it together. Like the upside is absolutely there, and I think that was not something we were saying last year with Oklahoma. And I think that's good progress with Venables. Real quick, is he on the hot seat at all?
I think a little bit. I mean,
I think he's got pressure. I think if you go 5-7, I think you could have a pretty uncomfortable conversation there about Brent Venables. But
like the scapegoat was the quarterback play and the offensive coordinator, right? Which you supposedly fixed in this offseason.
That's also like on Venables. That's like he brought in the quarterback. He brought in the offensive coordinator. Like that was.
It's on him.
Yeah.
I think if you go 6-6, I could definitely see him going out the door. But I don't know. Don't love to speculate. We're not in the business, you and I, of like knowing the inner machinations of like certain athletic departments because like they all operate differently and they all have different thresholds. It's all a different scale. It's all relative. But
Yeah.
yeah, there's significant pressure on Brent Venables to put this thing together for Oklahoma in 2025.